Good afternoon, everyone. We have a full agenda, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I am going to call to order the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Secretary, if you can call the roll.
Senator Buck.
Here.
Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Doyante.
Here.
Senator Pizzina.
Present.
Chair Nguyen.
Here. We are all present, so we will get started. And today I'm going to open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 486, which makes various changes related to transportation. I'd remind everyone to come up to the table and begin when you're ready.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen, Vice Chair Pizzina, and members of the Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. My name is Natha Anderson, and it is my honor to represent Assembly District 30. Nick Calero, of Pew Charitable Trust, as well as Kyle Davis of Opinion, are both joining me today to help present AB 486. I also have a few phone a friends members that are in the attendance today if there are any questions that we're unable to answer. Thank you for this opportunity in presenting this platypus bill. If you take a look at it, it actually fits in like 3 different areas. It fits it used to fit a little bit with revenue. That's now out. But it does still work with natural resources as well as growth and infrastructure. As we all know, the wildlife crossings has been incredibly successful around our state. I have a feeling you guys have already discussed the history of it, and I believe many on the committee have actually been both champions and then also continuing to bring up that success. But just a very quick reminder, there are numerous crossings in Elko, which include 3 overpasses. And these have been incredibly successful with hundreds of thousands of mule deer, utilizing these crossings. In the process, this in turn has actually helped with reducing vehicle collisions and likely saving human lives, as well as times and money for those who travel these highways. To replicate this success across our state, NDOT, or Nevada Department of Transportation, has created a list of about 30 priorities to be able to continue to do this. Investments in these priorities will have an initial cost, but the return on investment matters. But we also need to be realistic about the current environment. So the initial bill created an actual way to be able to fund that. But again, based upon the current environment and discussions, amendments had to be made. So these priorities should be considered as new projects are considered by NDOT. And that's exactly what this bill does. It asks for when people are making these plans at NDOT to consider what exactly is happening with the wildlife crossings, how can they be used for us. It is very easy for us to think everyone will remember these items because we see the success right now. But what about the people that will be in these seats after us? Whether it is as a legislator, the building across the campus, or even in the transportation areas, in the departments. By putting this into our statute, we can make sure that this is still something to be considered when making these plans. And that's exactly what we've decided to do in this. If you take a look at section 1.2A3, you'll notice that that is exactly what it's being asked to do. It will allow those who will be sitting in our seats later to actually make these decisions when making these plans. This could be also explained with the new language proposed in 1.3.2A2, which is found on page 3. I want to make sure also to make very clear that I want to thank Nova Simpson of Nevada Department of Transportation. She's in the audience today, who's been working hard on these projects and making sure that this is something at the forefront of discussions. Because again, there are many things to consider when we're making plans. And Ms. Simpson has always made sure, but how are we going to make sure that the wildlife crossings are part of it? With the chair's permission, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Calero on Zoom to provide further information on how the wildlife crossings have been successful. Mr. Calero?
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Calero. That's Callero. And I am a senior officer with the Pew Charitable Trust. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Pew, our U.S. conservation program collaborates with policymakers, tribes, and other stakeholders to advance common sense solutions that address the impacts of a changing environment on people and nature. And the identification and conservation of wildlife migration corridors is a key component of that work. I want to start by echoing the support expressed today for AB 486 by Assemblymember Anderson. And I really just want to emphasize a few specific points and offer Pew's unique perspective here, which has been gained through our work across the entire Intermountain West on this issue, where momentum around addressing wildlife vehicle collisions by investing in wildlife crossings is unmistakable across the West. On that note, in just a few short years, propelled by new science and a new federal grant program, several states across the nation have enacted bipartisan legislation investing millions of dollars in wildlife crossing infrastructure. For example, Utah recently appropriated $20 million to address wildlife vehicle collisions. New Mexico's governor just signed a $50 million bill that will fund new wildlife crossing infrastructure. And actually just last week, Montana passed a bill creating their first wildlife crossing account and are on the cusp of passing a second bill, which could happen any day now, that would create the nation's first significant dedicated funding mechanism that feeds into that account on an annual basis. Here in Nevada, with the successful establishment of Nevada's wildlife crossing account with Assembly Bill 112, which was passed last legislative session, passing this bill, AB 486, would help solidify this momentum and codify the implementation of wildlife crossings as an agency priority now and into the future, as Assemblymember Anderson just alluded to. And finally, I just want to emphasize a few stats that really drive home why this issue is so important for Nevada. And I know many of you have probably heard these and maybe even have them memorized by now. But according to NDOT, more than 500 wildlife vehicle collisions are reported each year, costing the state nearly $20 million. Now, there's an important caveat with that number in that wildlife vehicle collisions are significantly underreported, and it's actually estimated that fewer than 10% of animal vehicle collisions are officially documented. So if you look at those two numbers I just cited, the 500 collisions and the $20 million, you can imagine that those numbers are, in actuality, are significantly higher. And these accidents do have a cost. NDOT actually partnered on some research a few years ago and found that the average national cost per collision with mule deer, which are the majority of the collisions in the state of Nevada are with mule deer, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 per collision. Collisions with elk are in the neighborhood of $75,000 and moose $110,000. And given these high costs, it's very easy to deduce that properly placed wildlife crossings with associated fencing that funnel animals across busy highways can quickly offset their initial expense by reducing the need for emergency response, property repairs, and loss of wildlife. And so in closing here, I just want to drive home a fact that Nevada truly is a national leader on this issue. Nevada has a long history of investing in wildlife crossing infrastructure and has somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 animal crossings in place for both large and small animals, which includes, I believe, 6 overpasses, 3 on I-80, 2 on US 93, and 1 on I-11. And this bill will ensure that this leadership by the state continues into the future and will continue to make Nevada's roads safer for people and wildlife. And I encourage the committee's support for AB 486. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that committee members may have. Thank you.
Are you ready for questions?
Fire away.
I think we'll start with Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Actually, a mutual friend that Kyle and I have, Mel Belding, got a hold of me today about a situation in my district at Walker Lake. It's quite a herd of bighorn sheep right there, and according to him, there's a slaughter going on there because of so many cars hitting them. They literally stay right around the city of Walker there. So while Mr. Forget his name from the Pew mentioned mule deer, bighorn sheep are getting killed as we speak. Which raised the question in my mind, how do you determine where these sorts of locations. Total number of animals may be mule deer. Arguably, the more valuable one, when you look at the revenue generated and the interest, like me, I'm a lifetime member of Nevada Bighorns Unlimited. Mel served on the board. Kyle, I don't know if you're a member of NBU or not, but, there's a real concern because of the limited number to start with. So even though there may be less bighorns killed than mule deer, I'm kind of wondering how NDOT or whoever, how do they make the determination as to where these locations will be?
Thank you so much. Through the chair to Senator Hansen.
Feel free to go direct.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. Thank
Another
you.
archaic practice we need to get rid of. Go ahead.
Thank you. But thank you for bringing that up, because this bill does not make any sort of distinction between the different types of animals, because that's exactly it. Different areas are going to have different migratory patterns. That stated, I do believe that is part of the discussion that NDOT has gone through, and so I've asked Ms. Simpson to come on up and be able to answer that for you with a little bit more in depth.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Simpson?
Hi, Nova Simpson for the record, NOVA-SIMPSON. I work for NDOT Environmental Services as the Wildlife Crossing Program Manager. We did just wrap up a new prioritization effort, which we have shared with the Assembly prior, and I'd be happy to follow up and share that with you as well. Essentially, it looks at a variety of data from safety data, carcass data, collision data, as well as habitat species. So looking at species like the bighorn, providing them essentially a score for different layers that we then do a more complex GIS analysis. And that brings a total for every pixel on the map for the entirety of Nevada. And essentially, we came up with the top 30 based off those scores and how each pixel scored. Then we went to the different districts, which we just had meetings over the last couple of weeks, and we asked for essentially the specialist Department of Wildlife to select 2 projects per district that I can then focus on by pursuing with grants, because we don't have dedicated funding. And as you're all aware, the funding for the state is tight and costs have substantially increased. So we have a lot more to compete with now and fewer projects to do it with. So I am going to be pursuing those projects more diligently moving forward. That doesn't mean that if they didn't fall within those top 2, that we wouldn't be doing anything. We would still take the opportunity when we have overlapping projects or specific needs, such as like desert tortoise or bighorn sheep. So it just provides me a little bit more guidance, as we all have our like I like to call it pet projects. And so we have that coming in, pressures coming in almost daily on those kinds of needs. So it just provides me as that manager a little bit more guidance to pursue what the state looked at holistically as the biggest need
Good.
as we work through that.
Good, I'd like to get a copy of that if I could. And now, right now, if you had had a magic wand and we were to build all these projects at the same time, what's your estimated cost at that moment?
Nova Simpson for the record. I actually just did that a couple of weeks ago when I had the top 30, and just the top 30, we're looking at about $1 billion.
And Pew, you're online, you're gonna loan us that gonna grant us that $1 billion? I like you, man, I want you to come more often. We need you in finance. No, seriously, I mean, where's the money? Obviously, it's not gonna come out of general fund. You guys got some ideas with big companies like Pew or whoever to actually help finance at least a few? And when you do get the funding, how soon would you be doing these things?
Nova Simpson for the record. Yes, those are things that take time to plan. So, for example, I'm looking at kicking off research at Spooner Summit this spring with Tahoe Room Trail Association and Pathway for Wildlife. We're going to need a couple years of data to really dive in and understand what's happening up there. And then we would need a couple more years to deal with NEPA and construction, assuming we had the funding today. So we're looking at anywhere from 4 to 5 years out from the time that project is essentially instigated. Initiated, sorry.
And this is Assemblymember Anderson. I'm also going to add in, that's what actually started the bill. It was an attempt to try to raise those funds. The initial bill, if you've had a chance to look at it, was to take the recycling fee that is currently part of whenever you buy a tire, to increase that, which has not been increased since the 80s. And then, and have that basically that
Earmarked.
account be earmarked and build up for it, because this investment is a significant investment, but it is saving lives. And that's what the plan was. But again, based upon the political climate at this time, we were not able to necessarily get what we needed to do. And we had to be realistic. And this is a way for us to continue to have this in front of people's minds, and also as projects are being planned, to have this considered as part of it.
No, it's a good idea, and like you're saying, you know, somebody's gonna be warm in this chair besides me in the not terribly distant future. And if this is in statute, this program can continue hopefully indefinitely. Nice thing about these wildlife crossings is once they're in place, they're like maintenance-free. So it's a good program, a long-term. So if we can get more money out of Pew, that'd be great. The tax thing, I'm not so big on, but hey, if somebody's got some brilliant ideas on how we can raise some funds from all these NGOs, I'm all for it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I will remind Senator Hansen that we actually did make an investment, and they were able to draw down many millions of dollars in federal funds. I don't know if you can give an update on what our investment last session and how much we were able to bring down and what those projects look like, if you know.
Nova Simpson for the record. Yes, so that account established $5 million for us to use as seed money for grants. And we have applied for a total of 6 applications, I should say. We did receive 1 through the Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program. We have not formally received that. We're still in communications with Federal Highways, but our state investment is bringing in $16.8 million from that program. And we hope to see that within the next year, maybe. Fingers crossed.
Perfect. So thank you for being creative. I know that Senator Pazina misses her time on natural resources, and this is giving her a little taste of it. So I think she has some questions or comment to make as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much for being here. And this reminds me of the interim session where we brought AB 87 for the wildlife crossings. And I was curious because part of the discussion then had to do with fencing around some of the projects. Is that something that has been looked at throughout the state with upcoming projects?
Nova Simpson for the record. Yes, so you may be familiar with the Verdi area, and we just finished a big fencing project there over the last, I think it was about the end of '23. And so that one was just fencing where we tie into existing structures. We also have another one on the books for Dumpy Hills along I-80 for the same exact thing, to utilize fencing to tie into existing structures. So we do try to do that when it's feasible, to reduce the cost and maximize our current investments.
Thank you so much. And I had one more question. I noticed that looking at the requirement in regards to analysis of proposals, it moved to 50 million from 25 million. I was just curious why the change.
Let me see if I've got somebody else that can phone a friend for this one. Come on up. Here you go. Musical chairs.
And Ms. Simpson, thank you for the answer on the fencing.
Hi, Mark Wooster. Oh,
There
thank
you
you. Mark Wooster for the record, MarkWooster with Nevada Department of Transportation, Chief Performance Analysis Engineer. This change from 25 to 50 million was intended to align with the Code of Federal Regulations. It had to do with costs and benefits of proposed highway projects, analyzing, the cost versus the benefits to evaluate each project. And again, with inflation, just as it's increased prices for wildlife crossings and everything else, $25 million isn't as big of a project as it was, decades ago when this limit was set in NRS. So this move was to align with the federal $50 million threshold for projects being evaluated with cost-benefit analysis. We're not currently able to keep up with the number that are at the $25 million threshold.
And out of curiosity, how many projects do you think this would exclude then going from 25 to 50 million?
I do have that number. If you could hold on just a moment. I apologize for not having it ready. This is Mark Wooster for
Well,
the
and we
record.
appreciate you being here to answer, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if you don't have the information, you can always provide it to us, and we'll make sure that the committee gets that updated information.
It should take me just a second. The connectivity in here is not quite.
Why don't we
desired. I
email
think
that
it's about
to you?
30. It's roughly 30 projects.
Assemblymember Anderson, that was about 35. How many projects?
30.
About 30, but we will make sure to email that to you. and everybody in the committee.
Right. Do we have any further questions from committee members? Seeing none, we will begin testimony in support of Senate Bill 486. If you can come up to the table to
Thank
testify
you.
in support of Senate Bill 486.
And Chair, if you're okay, I will be leaving
Nope,
to go to
we're
my
good.
next committee, so thank you very much for this time, though.
No problem, thank you. And I also, before we get started on supportive testimony, I did want to mention that I see a bunch of people standing kind of in the hallway and all the way at the back. We did open up an overflow room in 2134. You would have to come in here to testify either in support, opposition, or neutral. But if you do want to sit down, there is additional space in that overflow room. And go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christy Cabrera-Georgeson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Nevada Conservation League. Nevada's iconic wildlife and open spaces make it a great place for both people and wildlife to call home. And NCL is proud to have worked on the issue of wildlife connectivity for many years now. As you've heard, roads and highways that intersect with wildlife habitat create safety hazards for both humans and wildlife. This also leads to degraded wildlife populations and has ripple effects on other species and their ecosystems. Wildlife crossings are shown to reduce collisions by as much as 90%, while facilitating natural wildlife migrations and movements. This bill is another important step to ensure our state agencies continue to prioritize wildlife connectivity and wildlife crossings. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. I'm actually here representing two organizations. One, my paying job, the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association, as well as the Great Basin Wildlife Conservancy. We enthusiastically support this bill, enthusiastically supported the bill even with the proposed fee increase, but I know that's not on the table. I think Ms. Jorgensen did a phenomenal job summarizing what the benefits of these wildlife crossings are. One, public safety, but I think perhaps as importantly is the fact, and what I'm here with respect to Great Basin Wildlife Conservancies, is it promotes the North American model of wildlife conservation. The first tenet of that is that wildlife is held in the public trust. And this does nothing but advance that goal. And anything that we can do to build more of these, NDOT and NDOW do a phenomenal job with the resources they have. You're going to see the table supporting it. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Paul Enos, E-N-O-S. I am the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association, here today in support of Assembly Bill 46. Just want to say thank you to the sponsor and the proponents of this bill for, coming out with this compromise. We do think that this is a way to get this very noble endeavor into the permanent process at the Nevada Department of Transportation. Consider these things when they do projects. And, ultimately, our hope is when they're out there doing a project, if you can do it for a more cost-effective way than the $1 billion number that we're hearing about, when you're out there at the same time, that maybe we can get some more of these things done. So once again, appreciate the sponsor of the bill and working with the proponents on this compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kyle Davis, now here on behalf of the Coalition for Nevada's Wildlife. Just wanted to add our support. Mr. McKay said just about everything that we would say, so thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. My name is Laurel Saito, and I am the Nevada Water Strategy Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada. The mission of the Nature Conservancy is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. In order to do this effectively, we recognize that preserving and enhancing connectivity of habitats and migration corridors is critical to maintaining the biodiversity of the state and for generations to come. At the Nature Conservancy, we believe that the most durable solutions to conservation issues are ones that meet the needs of people and nature. Planning for the strategic construction of wildlife crossings on transportation corridors does just that. It meets the needs of migrating species while protecting humans and wildlife from accidents and unnecessary deaths. Nevada is a leader in constructing wildlife crossings. Thousands of animals pass through the corridors that are along I-80, and people traveling along this busy interstate highway are protected by these crossings. If passed, this bill will help to ensure that we include the needs of all travelers in our transportation plans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 486? Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Suchander, spelled Jennifer Srichandr. I'm with One API in Nevada, a grassroots organization dedicated to organizing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders in Nevada to advocate for issues that impact our communities. In our Silver State, we're very fortunate to have such a rich natural landscape that's home to incredible wildlife. It's inevitable that wildlife will need to cross our roads, and without the right infrastructure in place to facilitate those crossings, collisions on the road can cost lives. The impact of wildlife collisions doesn't stop at the crash site. They have far-reaching consequences. These accidents not only put drivers and passengers at risk of severe injury, but they also cost millions of dollars each year in medical expenses, vehicle damage, emergency response, and road repairs. Beyond the human toll, collisions with wildlife disrupt ecosystems by weakening animal populations, and they can also cause public safety issues, leading to road closures, traffic delays, and secondary accidents. Investing in wildlife crossing is a proven way to reduce these collisions, protect both human and animal lives, and save substantial public funds over time. It's essential that we continue to increase ways to coexist with the natural world around us, and supporting AB 486 is a crucial step in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else at the table here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, if we can go ahead and go to the phone lines for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 486.
If you'd like to testify in support on AB 486, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
And while we're on the phone lines, can we see, we will close supportive testimony and move to opposition testimony. Is there anyone on the phone lines to testify in opposition?
If you'd like to testify in opposition, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Perfect. And at this time, we will go to in person here. I don't see anyone at the table here or in Las Vegas for opposition testimony. So I will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone to testify in neutral here in Carson City? I don't see anyone coming up to the table here or in Las Vegas. Can we go to the phone lines for neutral testimony?
If you'd like to testify in neutral, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral.
Thank you. And that, I know that our presenter, Assemblymember Anderson, had to go back and chair her own committee, so I don't believe there's any closing statements. So at this time, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 486. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I see the Assembly member presenting our next bill. So if we can move to Assembly Bill 174, I will ask the presenters to come to the table and begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Wen and Vice Chair Pazina and members of the committee. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon. I've never presented in GNI in the Senate. I'm Elaine Marzola, representing Assembly District 21. Assembly Bill 174 revises provisions relating to communication providers. Omar Salcedo, representing AT&T, is joining me today and is available to answer any technical questions the committee may have. It takes a mix of providers and technologies to bring connectivity to all corners of the United States. Satellite's advancement over the recent years and widespread reach over vast geographies make it the best solution for the most remote, expensive-to-serve locations that lack reliable fiber or wireless service. Beyond satellite's standalone role, satellite technology can also help to extend the reach of mobile wireless services to areas where wireless provider cell sites have not yet been developed or are otherwise infeasible. Currently, Nevada Currently, Nevada law does not recognize satellite technology as a form of alternative voice service. It only recognizes traditional wired and wireless services. The proposed changes to Nevada Revised Statutes 704.68886 will ensure Nevada is prepared for a future that connects all Nevadans, even in the most remote areas of our state. With your permission, Chair Nguyen, I would like to have Mr. Salcedo further discuss satellite, go over the bill, and answer any technical questions the committee may have.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Omar Salcedo. That's OMARSAUCEDO, and I'm appearing here today on behalf of AT&T. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 174. As a brief overview, AB 174 is a telecommunication bill that is brought here today in an effort to continue to modernize telecommunication law. The last time we amended provisions of NRS 704.6886, also known as the Provider of Last Resort chapter, which only applies to competitive suppliers, was over a decade ago in 2013. At that time, several updates were made, including removing antiquated provisions in law referring to telegraph. Over the past decade, the telecommunication marketplace has evolved once again. Telecommunication providers have invested heavily in building out their wireless networks. As a result, today, 97% of Americans own a cell phone. With high customer demand for connectivity and coverage, we're here today to recognize satellite technology as another viable form of telecommunication service in the state of Nevada. Simply put, AB 174 will help eliminate dead zones across our state and reflect the level of investment that many telecommunication providers are making to enhance coverage. The proposed changes in AB 174 will help ensure that all Nevadans are prepared for a future that provides reliable connectivity in all parts of our state, even in the most remote areas. Before concluding my remarks, I would like to quickly walk through the provisions of the bill. In Section 1, subsection 2B, we're adding a reference to satellite technology as a form of viable alternative voice service. Also, in Section 1, subsection 15A, we're removing the exclusion of satellite technology and the definition of alternative voice service. We understand why satellite technology was originally excluded from the changes of law made in 2013, when the technology was in its infancy. But as you can tell by recent advertisements, and most notably during the Super Bowl, we believe that satellite technology is now ready for prime time. In closing, I'm happy to say, one day, in the not-too-distant future, Nevadans will feel a greater peace of mind knowing that they have coverage in every corner of our great state, including our national parks, rural highways, and other hard-to-reach locations. This completes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I know I have a couple questions here. Let's see if you have any follow-ups. I have quite a few. So we received some opposition testimony from the Nevada Small Providers of Last Resort. And in looking through the limited legislative history in the Assembly, it looks like this was not something that was brought up during the presentation of this bill originally at any time during the Assembly hearings. I don't really see how this is impacted. It looks like they're trying to have an amendment on this bill just as another legislative vehicle because this chapter is open. But again, it seems like they have some concerns. Do you see how the insertion of this satellite language would harm or impact these rural telephone companies?
Thank you for the question. Omar Salcedo for the record. We did speak to the rural telephone providers and we had a conversation with them. Essentially, we explained to them that the section that we're amending and that we had history of amending in 2013 only applies to competitive suppliers. Those competitive suppliers are AT&T, Lumen, and Verizon. So the small-scale providers are under a different section of law, so this bill is not really applicable to them. As we explained to them, we would have concerns about constraining the PUC's jurisdiction over the calculation for Nevada Universal Service Funds, especially because we view this as not being applicable to Nevada Universal Service Funds.
And this may be a question for the PUC, so I see Garrett over there, so I'm going to probably call him up to the table here if he doesn't come up to the table in neutral. But I have a question, because it seems like passing this bill would allow continuous access for emergency services, for first responders, a stronger and quicker response for disasters and kind of keeps us all connected, especially during what has become wildfire season, or floods or any other kind of infrastructure failures. I'm not really seeing why some of these rural telephone providers would be impacted, but do you see any reason why the satellite language would harm the deployment of any of these broadband services that we currently have with the BEAD project or any of these broadband projects that are working through OSIT right now in the rural communities?
Thank you for the question. Omar Salcedo for the record. We do not. So during the Nevada BEAD process, there was many allocation made to providers to build out fiber, but it's not feasible and costly to build out fiber in every single location. So it was determined that satellite, for especially some of these very hard to reach locations, would be the best alternative. There's probably not a lot of wireless connectivity in some of these parts of the states. We've done our best over the years to make sure that we built out wireless to kind of make sure that rules are also connected. And fiber is another tool that we're using to build out to make sure that folks have the most modern technology. But currently, satellite's going to be the best option for a lot of these rural communities. So we do not see the concern, and you're 100% correct. First responders, there's vast geographies that there's coverage gaps. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of you have traveled through rural highways and you don't have connection in every single place. Essentially, what satellite will do will help ensure that if you are a motorist that's stranded out in the middle of nowhere or you have an emergency, you will be able to make that call. Also, if you are living, far away from the most urban area and you want to, you have a ranch, this is another tool that you'll be able to have because currently, I mean, if you have another satellite provider, you might have a ground kit or some sort of infrastructure at your home that you can make calls. But as soon as you leave your home, satellite's going to play a role to make sure that you have continuous coverage and you can still make those calls.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, I will let you step back. If you need to go to another place, Assemblymember
Oh, no, I'll stay here the
Marzola.
entire time.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And Elaine Marzola for the record, and just to make the record very clear, it is an unfriendly amendment.
Thank you. I think it was clear, but thank you. It's always good to get that on the record. If we could begin in testimony in support, I would ask you to come up. I will remind everyone we have 2 more bills. Me too, and yes, I support this, or yes, I oppose this is fine as well.
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen. My name is John, and members of the committee. My name is John Abel, represent the LVPPA and Public Safety Alliance of Nevada. Obviously, we support this bill. It's important to us because law enforcement needs to stay on the forefront of technological advances. We have large swaths of Nevada that don't have coverage, and it's very important because we still have law enforcement officers that are out there providing service and protecting the citizens. So for that, we support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Trevor Parrish with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber's in support of AB 174 because removing the satellite service exemption from the alternative voice service definition will help provide a greater flexibility for resource allocation for telecom providers in Nevada. With the rapid development of new technology, AB 174 will be a helpful tool to provide a higher degree of service to all Nevadans. We'd like to thank the bill sponsor, and we thank the committee for your time and consideration of this measure. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Jody Stevens, STEPHENS, testifying on behalf of the Wireless Infrastructure Association and a girl from rural Nevada, born and raised in Hawthorne. We support this for the connectivity issue as well as making sure we have access to during emergencies.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Joe Hill, Policy Analyst for the Retail Association of Nevada. We want to thank Assemblymember Marzola for bringing this bill forward. RAN is in strong support of AB 174 for retailers, especially those operating in rural or underserved areas. This bill could have significant implications. By recognizing satellite-based voice services as visible alternatives, AB 174 could encourage more competition and innovation in the telecommunications sector. This may lead to improved service quality and potentially lower costs for businesses that rely on reliable communication services for operations, customer engagement, and security. In today's economy, reliable modern telecommunications infrastructure is not a luxury, it's a necessity. AB 174 moves us towards a regulatory environment that better reflects the speed of innovation and how business is conducted today. We strongly urge your support for Nevada's retailers and AB 174. Thank you.
Chair and members of the committee, for the record, Jessica Ferrato, Ferrato, here today on behalf of Lumen in support of the bill. We'd like to thank the proponents and encourage your support. This brings a lot of connectivity to the state of Nevada, an important step moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Donna Laffey for the record, Laffey, here on behalf of Verizon. We're in support of AB 174. We think it's good policy that helps us to leverage existing technology to benefit consumers and expand public safety, and we'd urge your support as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Edith Duarte for the record, DUA-RTE, with Western Public Affairs, today representing TechNet in support of AB 174. For all the reasons mentioned already, we support this very common sense bill, and we thank the sponsor and hope that you will support the bill as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen and committee members. My name is Ellen Marquez, Marquez. I am providing comments on my own behalf and not on behalf of my employer. I am the proud parent of a young adult with Down syndrome, and we live in a rural area of Nevada. Emergency services must be accessible to everyone, regardless of where they live or how they communicate. When deaf and hard of hearing individuals cannot access timely communication support, critical needs go unmet. And during emergencies, this can have life-threatening consequences. AB 174 helps close these dangerous gaps by expanding access to satellite-based communication. This technology provides a vital opportunity to deliver video remote American Sign Language interpreting services across rural Nevada. Ensuring that individuals who use American Sign Language are not left without support during wildfires, emergency evacuations, medical emergencies, healthcare visits, court services, or other critical interactions. The passage of this bill means continuous access to emergency services for first responders and deaf and hard of hearing Nevadans alike. The ability for rural hospitals, public safety agencies, and government offices to connect with qualified American Sign Language interpreters through reliable video services, even during infrastructure failures. A stronger, more inclusive disaster response across the state where communication access is recognized as a right, not a privilege. Reliable communication and accessibility should not depend on geography. AB 174 ensures that no one, including deaf and hard of hearing Nevadans, is left behind when it matters most. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Dan Gordon, D-A-N-G-O-R-D-O-N. I'm the president of Nevada Police Union, and I represent Nevada State Police officers, game wardens, and also the state park rangers, and feel that and we support this bill wholeheartedly because we work all ends of the great state of Nevada and many of the rural communities, and having better communication for our officers and first responders is imperative. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen, committee members. Misty Grimmer representing Cox Communications. We also are in support of this bill. I think the two previous speakers just drew attention to how important it is to utilize every type of technology. Technology in this field is changing like crazy, so any methods for connectivity are things that we should encourage. Thank you.
And it looks like we have someone at the table in Las Vegas. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. My name is Emily Osterberg, Osterberg, and I am here representing the Henderson Chamber of Commerce and our over 2,000 members, the majority of whom are small businesses. HCC recognizes that reliable, widespread connectivity is essential to driving economic growth, supporting innovation, and ensuring all Nevadans have the opportunity to participate fully in today's digital economy. By updating the NRS to recognize satellite as an alternative voice service, Nevada can ensure businesses, workers, and entrepreneurs across the state have access to the tools they need no matter where they are located. For these reasons, we are in support of AB 174. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can go to the phone lines now for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 174.
If you'd like to testify in support on AB 174, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
And if we could go to testimony in opposition. If you are here to testify in opposition to this bill, please come up to the table right now. I don't see anyone here in Carson City or in Las Vegas. If we can go to the phone lines to see if there is anyone to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 174.
If you'd like to testify in opposition on AB 174, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if I can be heard. Do folks hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead and please clearly state your name and spell it for the record and begin when you're ready.
Yes, we'll do. My name is Patrick Rostall from BRB Law. I'm representing the Small Provider of Last Resort group referenced earlier, who sent a letter of opposition in this morning to AB 174. The companies in our group are Beehive Telephone, Lincoln County Telephone, Moapa Valley Telephone, E4 Connect, and Rural Telephone Company. And we're opposed to the bill only because it will have unintended consequences. We understand the bill is targeting, in essence, provider of last resort relief for larger companies, competitive suppliers like AT&T. But this bill, as written, will redefine satellite as an alternative voice provider or voice service, which will have ramifications beyond just the competitive supplier context. We know this because it came up in the context of a workshop in a proceeding addressing the Nevada Universal Service Fund, docket number 24-12030, before the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. It came up in the context of a discussion about how to potentially reduce or eliminate support for rural telephone companies like our group. And so we don't think this is a theoretical concern. I also don't think this bill has any tangible benefits for public safety or improving connectivity. What it allows is for larger providers to lift their provider of last resort obligations. But in the process, it may have the consequence of stripping these rural telephone companies of $2 million that they're devoting to rural infrastructure. And I'll just explain a little bit further by saying that it is possible, based on this language, that the commission will use this language to say that every location where there is satellite, that location is no longer supportable by the NUSF. That's the exact implication from the workshop that I mentioned. And the consequence of that will be negative effects on consumers in the form of reduced investment in fiber in these areas. It will not necessarily have a direct impact on BEAD, as was discussed earlier, or grant funds of that sort, but it could have a direct impact on this $2 million that these companies are using to support operations in rural areas. So, and satellite does have problems, latency. They've had high prices historically. 911 is an unproven record. So if the idea is to substitute these companies out for satellite, that's not a good public policy choice. And we would ask that this bill be rejected, not adopted, unless our language is incorporated. And I could read the language into the record if desired, but it is in our letter. And what it does is clarify that this will not have an impact on the Nevada Universal Service Fund. So I will pause there. If there are questions for me, I'm certainly happy to answer them, but that is our position.
I do have some questions, and I appreciate your willingness to be able to answer that. I will say that we have all received the proposed amendment that you have. And I normally wouldn't bring this up, but you had referenced it not only in your letter and email, but also alluded to it today. It seems inappropriate that you're seeking this amendment given the fact that the PUC has initiated this investigatory docket regarding the calculation of the Nevada Universal Service funding for rural telephone companies. So is that more the motivation? You don't like the way the commission is currently not ruling potentially in your favor or indicating that they're investigating the way they are going to distribute these funds moving forward?
I'm not certain if I'm unmuted, but I am happy to answer that question.
I can hear you, so please go ahead and begin.
no.
And can you state your name again every time you speak, just so we have a clear record?
Sure, Patrick Rossball again for the small PLR group. So no, we're not trying to prescribe something the commission would do. We're trying to make sure that this bill doesn't end up being the reason why the commission goes in one direction or another. The commission is going to hold that proceeding. They're going to do an investigation. If our language were incorporated into this bill, all it would mean is that this bill wouldn't be usable as the basis to reach a conclusion that would cut the funding. The commission wants to reach that conclusion for some other reason. That's what the proceeding is for. But we're concerned about this bill having that unintended consequence.
I appreciate that concern. However, I guess my reading of just the plain language of this section of the NRS is it doesn't seem to preclude small telephone companies like the ones you represent from having that opportunity to explain to the PUCN why they should continue to receive those subsidies from the Nevada Universal Service Fund for a landline service, even though there are competitors in your area offering perhaps more modern services without receiving those subsidies. You would still be able to make that argument before the commission, wouldn't you?
We are making that argument. It's a very compelling argument, but we don't think that this bill should be the basis for reaching an opposite conclusion. And the quote that we provided in our letter shows that the commission was referencing this bill in the same exact discussion in which staff was suggesting significantly cutting or eliminating the funding. So it isn't us that made that connection. The commission made that connection. And we just want to make sure that it's viewed objectively based on the record in that proceeding and not influenced by this bill.
Well, I think this bill, should it move forward, is just a modernization. It gives the commission just some other things to consider when they're making those kind of decisions. But I guess my other question is it sounds like in speaking with the bill sponsor, have you had any conversations other than submitting this potential unfriendly amendment to the committee members with the bill sponsor prior to, I guess, this week?
Yeah, we addressed that in our letter. Again, Patrick Rossball here for the small PLR group. The workshop I referenced where the true unintended consequences of this bill came to light, that was on March 25th. So we didn't have enough time to, express our concerns to the bill sponsor. We did talk to AT&T, as they noted. We also talked to the commission. I think those conversations are ongoing. So we wish that we could have engaged earlier. Nevertheless, the concerns are valid, and so we raised them as soon as we possibly could.
Well, I would just remind you, I see that you have an address here in California. We are a legislature that only meets every other year for 120 days. So it is very typical that our bills move during that prescribed timeline. Otherwise, they won't move forward. So I would encourage you, obviously, you're very, very late to this game to have these kind of conversations, but I would encourage you to reach out directly to the bill sponsor, as this bill is progressing through it. And thank you for answering those questions. Does anyone else have any other questions here? I don't see anyone, so thank you for that. And thank you for those questions. So I will move on. Are there any other people to testify in opposition that are on the phone lines?
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition.
And we'll move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone to testify in neutral? He's like, dang.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. My name is Garrett Weir, Garrettweir. I'm General Counsel for the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. And in the interest of efficiency, I will just make myself available to answer any questions regarding the context or the effects of AB 174 or the language or intent of the proposed amendment.
Thank you. I'm glad that the person that had submitted the opposition testimony was on the phone to be able to, do that. I feel like with the fact that it is front and center in there, like opposition, referencing some of the conversations that have happened during this investigatory docket regarding the Nevada Universal Services Fund. Do you have any concerns with this proposed amendment in the opposition letter regarding the calculation of these funds being included and the definition of alternative voice services?
For the record, Garrett Weir. Yes, we, as written, the proposed amendment, we're concerned that it creates an implication that the commission would somehow be restricted in its consideration of alternative voice services when reviewing potential disbursements from the Universal Service Fund. We think that the amendment is unnecessary. There was, the reference to the discussion that occurred during the commission investigation. To provide more context there, the presiding officer in that instance, Commissioner Brown, was actually explaining that the current statutes that are definitions that are applicable to the commission's review of NUSF funding calculations, those considerations are, he was explaining, those definitions do not restrict the commission to, in its consideration of satellite service. He was mentioning that, only this this provider of last resort obligation relief proposal, that was, the one discrete place where there isn't a current statutory restriction on the consideration of satellite service, that is even being, potentially revisited by the legislature. So right now, I can tell you definitively that definition of alternative voice service does not apply. That's not the controlling definition for what the commission can consider when looking at disbursements from the NUSF. Just as there's another definition of alternative voice service in another unrelated section of the NRS, we don't refer to that either. That's not controlling in the NUSF proceedings, and that's NRS 704-6881 sub 4. Instead, the commission uses the more generally applicable definition of telephone service or telecommunication service, which includes all telecommunication regardless of the equipment, facilities, or technologies used. So really right now, the commission, its discretion is clear, we think, and it just adds confusion, in our opinion, to introduce this language here in this section where, it's a definition that's clearly, in the plain language is that it's limited to this section that relates to provider of last resort relief. So, yes, we have some concerns.
Do you see any of these it doesn't seem like this applies, and it seems like this amendment is just meant to curb, I guess, the commission's authority to do this after an investigatory docket was, I guess, initiated against maybe the distribution of these funds. So I don't see how this even applies to these rural and limits or anything. Is that kind of your take on the way the bill exists, like it is presented today? Not with the amendment.
For the record, Garrett Weir, I don't want to speculate on the intent of the proposed amendment. I think I understand the concern of the commission relying on this or it being persuasive to the commission's assessment of alternative services for the purposes of the NUSF. And again, the NUSF, just in statute, it's named the Fund to Maintain the Availability of Telephone Service. And so one of the core assessments that the commission performs in those proceedings is whether there is available telephone service. And so it looks to, that availability, how accessible is it, how affordable is it, that sort of thing. And so currently the commission has discretion without regard to technology, and we just think that the proposal or the proposed amendment perhaps muddies the waters there.
Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for answering some of those questions that we had that came from the proposed unfriendly amendment. Do we have anyone else to testify in neutral? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Is there anyone to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 174?
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And do you have any closing statements that you'd like to make?
For the record, Omar Saucedo, representing AT&T. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present AB 174. I think it's important to distinguish again that this bill is aimed to just recognize a modern connectivity option that is currently being deployed and is only becoming more competitive. I know that there was a little bit of confusion, and that's one of the reasons why we do not think that amendment is germane, because we are trying to make sure that the integrity of the statute and what we're trying to do remains in that fashion. We do not want to have any unintended consequences of what this does, and our bill is very simple, and it just recognizes and modernizes telecommunication law as we currently have in Nevada. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 174. And, who is next? I don't know. Let's see. I'm just going to go in numerical order. We will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 55. So if you are here to testify or present Assembly Bill 55, I'd ask you to come to the table and go ahead and begin when you're ready.
All right, good afternoon. Chair Wynn and members of Senate Growth and Infrastructure, my name is Amy Davey. I'm the Director of the Nevada Office of Traffic Safety. We brought a little slide deck. It's very short. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. I'm joined at the table here by some of my colleagues. This is Lacey Tisler. She's the Chief Traffic Safety Engineer from NDOT, and my Public Information Officer, Anita Pepper. I think on the phone we have Dr. Laura Knight, who is the Chief Medical Examiner and Coroner for the Washoe County Regional Medical Examiner's Office. And we may also have Director Melanie Rouse from the Clark County Office of the Coroner Medical Examiner. I see Dr. Knight, so thank you for joining us. We're going to provide an overview of the changes proposed in AB 55. Our presentation is short, and we're happy to take questions as we work through the presentation or at the end. Thank you. Slide 2. There are two primary components to AB 55, which focus on improving motor vehicle crash data collection. Much of what is requested in AB 55 is already occurring in practice, and the proposed language is meant to update NRS, describe current processes, and align with required standards. This includes we're requesting to include drug toxicology testing and reporting for car crash victims, and to clarify the methods and timelines associated with filing crash reports, as well as to acknowledge NDOT's role in the safety data partnership. NRS Chapter 484E describes how, when, and to whom crash investigation reports must be made, and NRS Chapter 484C deals entirely with driving under the influence of alcohol or a prohibited substance. The version that you have in front of you is an amended version, which does not reference, previously we were referencing language in 484C regarding prohibited substances, and that language has been changed in the version you have. Just an overview of crash data on slide 3. Through the US DOT, the Federal Highway Administration, and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Nevada is the recipient of a large amount of federal funds intended to address transportation safety needs. Concurrent with the allocation of federal dollars are many types of requirements, including those that require state agencies such as DPS and NDOT to track safety data, report crash data to the federal government through the Fatality Analysis Reporting System, set safety goals, and build and execute plans and programs to improve safety on our roads. In addition to federal reporting, crash and citation data is used by myriad partners such as Nevada's universities, hospitals, law enforcement and first responders, regional transportation commissions, local governments, nonprofit organizations, and state agencies such as Health and Human Services, NDOT, DMV, DPS, and policymakers such as the legislature. We constantly review, report, and analyze safety data to build the best programs we can. Slide 4. Adding language specifying toxicological testing for drugs both supports existing practice and aligns our statutes with requirements to report impairing substances to the FARS system. An analysis of a full year of records that we received on deceased victims shows that 90% of the reports that we already receive include testing results for impairing substances in addition to alcohol. In 1 year, we show that 373 tests for alcohol were conducted, and 366 of those tests included testing for drugs. Roughly 10% of reports that we receive do not include testing results, and that's often due to a time lapse between the time of the car crash and the time the victim passes away. In other words, individuals who are in the hospital prior to death, rendering additional testing by the coroner's office ineffectual, and in a small amount of cases, we're unable to collect information from the public agency. AB 55 in the amended version proposes changes to NRS 44C 170, which currently require a coroner or other public official performing like duties to test deceased victims of car crashes for the presence and concentration of alcohol by adding testing for the presence and concentration of other substances. We originally used the term prohibited substances because this term is included in NRS currently, but we had conversations with the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office and the Clark County Coroner's Office, and they requested broader terminology be used, which allows postmortem testing panels that they're currently using and provides flexibility to them in the testing as drug trends change. This also allows them to maintain their current processes and would not result in increased testing costs to them. Right now, the term prohibited substances in NRS 44C has 7 types of categories of drugs. It appears somewhat outdated, does not include drugs such as fentanyl, other opioids, benzodiazepines, and other drugs which are often found in testing of decedents. And then additionally contained within the amendment are the removal of the 8-hour testing requirement and 30-hour reporting requirement, neither of which are current practice. And if you have questions about either the testing or those timeframes, Dr. Knight will be able to give you specific detail. On slide 5, we have a sample of a coroner's report. This is a sample from the Clark County Coroner's Office, and it depicts the results of toxicological testing for a car crash victim. The federal FARS reporting system contains codes for hundreds of substances and stipulates that we include all data available from the testing. On slide 6, sections 2 and 3 of AB 55, we suggest minor clarifying changes to, again, align with current process and to describe certain distinctions. In section 2, subsection 1, we acknowledge that crash reports are received by the DPS through an electronic crash reporting system rather than paper forms. We clarify that crash reporting must begin within 10 days after the date of the crash or after the date of the death of a person in the crash. This is called early notification, and it is a requirement of a FARS of reporting to the federal government. This also clarifies that the initial report of the crash need not wait until the full investigation is complete. Section 2, subsection 2 identifies the Nevada Department of Transportation as a primary stakeholder and collaborator in the crash data system. This acknowledges NDOT's fundamental role in providing support to the system and their assistance with updating the state's street maps and street files and geolocation of crashes, analysis of safety data, and NDOT's federal requirements to have access to this data. NDOT is the largest consumer of this data and a critical component of the system. Sections 3 through 6 make minor conforming changes that recognize DPS uses an electronic crash reporting system where the crash report form template is maintained and accessed. Slide 7. And so that concludes our introduction of AB 55, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Senator Pacina.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here for the presentation. And this is just something I'm curious about. I noticed it removed the requirement that a blood sample be drawn within 8 hours of the crash, and I understand that sometimes it can be hard to make that happen logistically. I was just curious if there was a period of time where the result might not be as accurate if it can't be taken within a certain amount of time to get in.
Thank you for that question. I'd like to turn that question over to Dr. Knight.
Thank you. Dr. Laura Knight, Chief Medical Examiner at the Washoe County Regional Medical Examiner's Office, for the record. The time frame in law of 8 hours not only isn't really practical in some cases, it doesn't really have a basis in science. As the senator asked, there is a time frame after which testing would be less reliable, but that's more in terms of days. Usually, testing samples are drawn within 24 hours after a crash. Sometimes there is some time required to transport a body from the rural areas of Nevada to my office, for example, where we provide autopsy services for the rural counties in Nevada, and then the Clark County office also provides services for a couple of their adjacent counties. So there may be a delay in transport time, but mostly it's just that 8 hours isn't really based in science. And as long as the specimen is drawn in a practical time frame, it's still fine for testing purposes. The body doesn't continue to metabolize or break down drugs. The liver after death doesn't continue to do that. And so the sample will still be fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the sample would still be taken, and I don't think the bill specified a new amount of time, but that sample would still be taken then within a reasonable amount of time in order to get the scientific data you needed?
Dr. Laura Knight again for the record. Yes, ma'am. I believe that the law specifies that testing should be done, and it is being done already, and it's consistent with our practices to do that on any traffic victim and to report that data. So yes, we will still do the testing and get the data for being reported and hopefully for prevention efforts.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the work you do, and I hope none of us in this room or building have to see you in a professional capacity at all. Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen. I was just wondering, this is all new to me, what currently happens? So do you currently, if a person dies, what do you test the living person if there's two involved in a crash, and then you test the dead person also? Is that what happens?
This is Amy Davey for the record. So we're talking about two different things. Live driver testing would be for the purpose of establishing some type of causative factor, and that's not contemplated in this legislation, which is just specific to the collection of the deceased victims of car crashes. For the purpose, for many purposes, really. Federal reporting requirements, but also to help improve our programs and to help improve our outreach. But this does not impact or touch live driver or live living victim testing.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. I think you kind of answered my questions, like, as far as it goes with people that are potentially defendants or suspects in DUI-related accidents, they're contained in a different section of law. And would this have to do with, like, perhaps if someone was, is it like a pedestrian death? If someone was killed by a driver, and they were a pedestrian, would their blood be taken in a circumstance like that?
I believe, yes, the practice is any deceased victim of a car crash is going to, is currently tested for alcohol. We're just requesting to add, well, actually, they're currently being tested for both. It's just the statute only recognizes blood alcohol content. In practice, the coroners are testing for both alcohol and other substances.
And I think you may have answered this, and I apologize if I missed it. I was trying to look something up on this bill in particular, but, and Senator Pizzina may have asked it. The 8 hours, is there anything that we need to be concerned about, like does anything happen to that blood at 10 hours or 12 hours or anything like that that makes the results of whatever you find in that unusable?
Amy Davey.
Dr. Laura Knight, again, for the record. I did address that, but I'm happy to cover it. There is a time frame beyond which specimens can be altered by the postmortem interval or how long someone's been deceased. It's more in the time frame of days where we start to get those changes. The practice currently is that we draw these samples as soon as is practical. The 8-hour time limit would put us in the position, if we were really following that, of possibly having to draw specimens after extricating someone from a vehicle at the scene of death. And it's really not a best practice in our field. And it's also going to increase the time that crash is still out there on the roadway, creating a hazard. So I really feel strongly that this would be better done in the controlled laboratory environment where I can draw a good sample. And it's being done already, within a reasonable time frame. So I don't think that removing the 8 hours from this harms anything. And I think it just brings this into alignment with what our practices are throughout the state already. Did that answer your question, Chair?
It did, and I thought I caught part of that. I just wanted to make sure and confirm. So I appreciate you repeating yourself because I was distracted by looking at other sections of the bill at the time. But thank you for that. Seeing how we have no other questions, I will go ahead and ask you guys to step back. And if you are here to testify in support of this bill, I'd ask you to come forward and testify. Seeing no one coming to the table to testify in support of AB 55, I will move to the phone lines because I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Is there anyone on the phone lines to testify in support of AB 55?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for support of AB 55 at this time.
And while we're on the phone lines, is there anyone to testify in opposition to AB 55?
Thank you, Chair. We have no callers for opposition at this time as well.
And do we have anyone here in Carson City or in Las Vegas to testify in opposition to AB 55? Seeing no one coming up to the table in either location, I will move into neutral testimony. Is there anyone to testify in neutral? Seeing no one here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, we can go to the phone lines for any neutral testimony on AB 55.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Okay, and at this time, I will close testimony in neutral as well. Do you have any closing statements? I am seeing them wave me off. So at this time, we will close the, no, perfect. At this time, we will close the hearing on AB 55, and I will open the hearing on AB 493, which I believe is being presented by Ms. Butler virtually on a Zoom. So again, at this time, I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 493, and go ahead and begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for the opportunity to present AB 493 today. For the record, my name is Evelyn Butler, EVELYN BUTLER. I'm the Vice President of Technical Services with the Solar Energy Industries Association. We are the National Industry Association and have represented companies and organizations for the last 50 years that include manufacturers, installers, independent power producers, third-party owners who lease solar, and many others who provide services for solar and energy storage, including recyclers. Today, we operate the nation's only solar recycling partner program, working with commercial recyclers to develop and deliver decommissioning and recycling services for our technology. As mentioned by the chair, I'm here to present AB 493, which addresses the collection, disposal, and retirement of solar equipment at decommissioning. I would note that the original bill included recycling for batteries, but the amendment accepted in the Assembly removed those portions of the bill. Sections 33, 37, and 38 pertain to solar. As we see the deployment of solar energy grow nationally and within Nevada particularly, having utility scale solar projects, we see the necessity to responsibly manage the equipment at decommissioning, favoring reuse and recycling. At a high level, the bill seeks to improve the state's current decommissioning and end-of-life management of photovoltaic panels, particularly focusing on utility-scale solar projects and third-party owned residential solar systems. This bill will not impose requirements on individual homeowners who own their solar panels to create disposal plans. The bill revises the decommissioning plan requirements already in law for utility-scale solar projects, now requiring a plan for the decommissioning of the site that includes reuse or recycling, that the percentage rate of the material recovery for any solar PV panel or photovoltaic panel that will be recycled at the end of its useful life of the distributed system must be 90% or greater by weight, and a plan to return the land to a substantially similar state before the construction of the utility scale project. Owners of leased distributed generation systems or systems from which consumers directly purchase the electricity will also be required to file disposal plans with the Division of Environmental Protection and will have similar responsibilities outlined in their plans that include how they will decommission the systems and how that will be conducted, including plans for reuse or recycling, and that they will have a similar percentage rate of the material recovery of any solar photovoltaic panels that will be recycled, and that must also be 90% or greater by weight. Combined, the PV recycling and decommissioning portions of the bill will help ensure sustainability and responsible management of solar development across the state. Thank you again for your consideration, and to the bill sponsor, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. I know that this bill has changed significantly since it was first introduced, so I appreciate you giving us that update on the amendments and the bill as we are seeing it here today. Do we have any questions from members? Okay, if we can go to Senator Pizzina.
Thank you so much, Ms. Butler, for the presentation and for being here today. And this could just be me not understanding, which, believe you me, is entirely possible. But so just to understand, the owner of the distributed generation system, so the owner of this is the one who's responsible for filing the plan as well as figuring out the removal of the system. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Evelyn Butler. Thank you, Chair and Senator. Yes, so when we refer to owners of leased distributed generation systems, those are technically those installers or owners who own many, many systems that they are leasing to a consumer. So it is not the homeowner or the consumer who's directly purchasing a system. We've actually included a provision in the bill that states that these requirements do not apply to those individual homeowners who outright own their solar panels. Rather, those companies that are doing mass leasing, for instance, of systems to homeowners, they will be the ones responsible for ensuring that when needed, those systems are decommissioned and arrangements for recycling or reuse are made. So no individual homeowner who owns their solar system will be affected by this bill.
And again, can you tell us a little bit about the organization that you are here, that you represent? It is a trade association, is that correct? Oh, looks like we have another person.
For the record, Evelyn Butler, and thank you, Chair Wynn, for the question. Yes, we are the National Industry Association. In addition to working closely with many different state solar and energy storage associations, we also represent manufacturers, installers, independent power producers, those people who own the systems and who build and construct them. We are based in Washington, D.C., but I personally am actually based in California, not too far away from Carson City. And so, we certainly recognize that every state has the need for decommissioning and want to make sure that we're actively supporting the effort to introduce recycling and reuse as the preferred methods for decommissioning.
Thank you. And I think we have Ms. Ferrato. If you go ahead and introduce yourself and answer any questions you might have.
Chair Wynn, members of the committee, for the record, Jessica Ferrato here today on behalf of SEIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association. I'm their contracted lobbyist here in Nevada, so I'm just here to be backup. Chair Watts, this idea is his brainchild, and we were here to support and bring him information from across the country, what's currently happening on recycling as it pertains to solar. And to Senator Pazina's question, this is intended to be for very large scale solar projects, not for the traditional rooftop solar on residences.
Thank you. I think that answers your question. Do we have any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. We at this time will move into testimony in support of AB 493. If you were here to testify in support of AB 493, please come up to the table and begin when you are ready.
Good evening, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. My name is Grace Michelson, Michaelson, with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs representing Western Resource Advocates. Western Resource Advocates is a nonprofit conservation group that works for common sense solutions that protect our land, air, and water resources. WRA would like to voice our strong support for AB 493. AB 493 addresses critical environmental and public health concerns related to the disposal and recycling of distributed generation systems in Nevada. It's important to ensure that the end-of-life management of these systems does not pose environmental risks to our state, and this bill provides a comprehensive framework that ensures that owners of distributed generation systems submit a detailed disposal plan to the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. Furthermore, the bill's provisions for surplus asset retirement plans and mandatory reporting by recycling facilities will enhance transparency and accountability, further setting a precedent for the responsible handling of renewable energy infrastructure. I urge the committee to support AB 493.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Amanda Brazo-Nolting with Row Law Group here on behalf of Tesla. We're very supportive of AB 493 in its current form, which establishes rules for solar recycling. We want to thank Assemblyman Watts for his great work and engagement on this issue and work on getting the policy right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Christy Cabrera-Georgeson, Deputy Director of the Nevada Conservation League. The growing adoption of solar system represents a significant economic opportunity for our state to also lead in clean energy innovation. However, we must also ensure that we handle end-of-life disposal and recycling of these materials in a way that maximizes resource recovery, minimizes environmental harm, and protects public health. We urge the committee's support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Brett Scalari with Strategies 360. Thank you, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. We represent Piddle Point Recycling in the city of Henderson. They are a commercial recycler. We appreciate the work that Assemblymember Watts put into this, and we are ready for business in this area, so we appreciate it and urge your support.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else here in Carson City and no one at the table in Las Vegas. If we can go to the phone lines for testimony and support.
Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
While we're on the phone lines, is there anyone to testify in opposition?
Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Wonderful. If there's anyone to testify in opposition, I'd ask you to come up to the table. Seeing no one coming up to the table here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, I will move to testimony in neutral. If you are here to testify in neutral, come up to the table and begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen, Vice Chair Pazina, and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Carr, CARR, Administrator for the Division of Environmental Protection, or NDEP. NDEP is neutral on this bill, AB 493, as it exists as reprint 1. NDEP appreciates the bill's requirement to plan for the disposal of distributed or utility-scale energy generating systems at the end of their useful life to promote potential reuse or recycling. Our focus is the solar panels and associated battery storage facilities related to these green energy materials. NDEP implements federal regulations related to solid and hazardous waste. When a solar panel is considered discarded, the item becomes a solid waste regulated under NRS 444 and is potentially also a hazardous waste regulated under NRS 459, depending on its components and manufacture. Nevada is experiencing a shift in management of solid and hazardous waste from one of general disposal to one wherein recycling of these materials is a business venture. So this bill provides a role for the division in this process alongside the Public Utilities Commission and others. And we also appreciate the addition of reporting for recycling rates of these materials, which we will use in the recycling report that's required otherwise by Nevada law. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you.
I don't see any questions, but thank you for the offer. We'll go to the phone lines to see if there's anyone else to testify neutral on Assembly Bill 493.
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And do you have any closing remarks, or would you like to waive those remarks? I'm sorry, that's for you, Ms. Butler.
I would waive those at the time.
Perfect, thank you.
For the record, Evelyn Butler, thank you.
And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 493, and that brings us to our last agenda item, which is public comment. I will open up public comment, so if you're here to testify in public comment, I'd ask you to come up to the table. I don't see anyone here in Carson City or coming up to the table in Las Vegas. Is there anyone on the phone lines to testify in public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you. With that, I will close public comment, and that brings us to the end of our agenda today. We will have a meeting on Wednesday where we have several bills again. Again, I'm trying everything I can to avoid Friday meetings, so it may mean doubling those up. But with that, we will close the meeting today. Thank you, everyone.